Find us every Saturday, 4 p.m. Eastern, 1 p.m. Pacific, on 365 Sportscast radio streaming service. Download the app. Makes it crazy easy to listen. Happy Saturday, Strat fans. I'm your host, Jimmy James, and you're listening to Strat-O-logy, the show for and by students of Strat-O-Matic. On today's show, we'll be having a Strat chat with Franky35, the winner of the 2021 Mystery Tournament. Let's get to it. So sit back, grab your cards and dice, and let's roll. I have with me one of the very best Strat365 players around. He is almost always in the finals league for the Mystery Tournament. In fact, I believe it's 7 out of the last 8, and the one that I saw that he didn't make, he was 19th that year. A big welcome to your 2021 Mystery Tournament champion, Franky35. Really appreciate you taking the time out of your day to talk to us, Frank.
Well, thanks, Jimmy. It's you like to be called Jimmy James? Which James?
Jimmy James.
Jimmy James. Okay. It's great to be here. I really have fun playing Strat.
Oh, dude, thank you so much for being here. Just a real quick thing. I just wanted to tell everybody out there and to thank you, publicly here. It was a real great experience playing with you guys in the Mystery Tournament Finals this year. Everyone was so helpful and accepting of, especially the two of us that were so new that had never been there. And you, Jimmy C, Lee 300, you guys really made us feel welcome. And, we were all a little bit in awe to be there playing with you guys. And you guys made it a good transition for us. So thank you very much for that, too.
I think the Mystery Tournament is a great way for new players to learn the game. And sometimes I've been, playing it for a mystery game for like 9 years or something, or 10 years. And sometimes I will email players that I think are new players, or, I can look at their profile or whatever and say, let me know if you need any help. I learned the hard way that I can't tell players, oh, do you know that you just picked up a player with an injury reveal for his worst year? Because I've seen that happen. And then sometimes they say, okay, it's a new player. Let me tell them, they'll learn. And one player really got angry with me for doing that. So some people are really, love to get some advice early on, and some people really hate it. So if somebody sees me in a league and has a question, please send me an email. I'll be very happy to try to help.
Wow, that's wonderful, Frank. That was, this was my second Mystery Tournament, and when I played in the Mystery Tournament in the year before, it was literally the first mystery set I had ever played. It came, I saw the banner, I jumped in, and like you said, I did not understand anything about how to the injury reveals or anything of that. And actually it was another one of our 12, Jimmy C, that reached out to me and said, hey, there's this great thread on the forum. You need to read this, and link me to it. And, he really was that also for me. So, people like you, people like Jimmy, people doing that really, I think, is wonderful for this community. I mean, it's a really good thing that you're doing there, Frank. I mean,
yeah, starting out, Jimmy C was the player I was really felt myself competing against. He beat me like the first. I was in playoffs with him about like 8 or 9 times. He beat me every time in the playoffs, and then I started, winning some of those. So that's when I knew, okay, now I know how to play this game well. Yeah, he's really good. Been in there a long time.
Oh, yes, definitely. And one of the things I also want to talk here about Frank's season this year, I believe, I know it was by the 70s, but I believe you led wire to wire all the way through all 4 events and the new semifinals. So Dude, that's quite an accomplishment, Frank. Dude, these are a lot of good players. I mean, there are really 25, 30 really good players in this tournament that are, really there at the top all the time. And to have that consistency for a year, wow, it was something.
Yeah, I got lucky on some teams, and I've been playing a while, so I know the sets except the 2000 set, which I'm still lost in. Uh, so if you get lucky on some cards early on, you can rack up the points.
Yeah, well,
so hopefully I'll get a good start in this year's tournament.
oh, I'm hoping so too. We're going to talk about that here just in a little bit. So here, Frank, for our listeners, tell them a little bit about yourself. So one of the things I like to do with this show is to humanize some of the Strat players, especially for each other when we're playing in the big tournaments and things like that. You see these names. It's kind of nice to be able to put a person to a computer profile. So tell us a little bit about yourself.
So I'm getting up there in age. I started I grew up in Cincinnati and used to go to the Riverfront Stadium to see Big Red Machine back in the Joe Morgan days and Johnny Bench, Pete Rose. So great teams. One of the greatest all-time teams. George Foster in those few years that he was super good. Davey Concepcion. So that was fun. I was an early fan of the Baltimore Orioles back in the early 70s with Frank Robinson and Earl Weaver, Boog Powell, and the crew. So it's really fun to be able to see those players again. I hadn't played Strat as a kid. I played a little bit of APBA baseball. I played some game that had a spinner, some all-star game. I don't remember what the name of that game was.
I think we all played that game, Frank. I think that's how most of us led in. In fact, I think it was even Hal that played a game like that led him into the idea of creating Strat. So it's the gateway game / drug, I think. That little spinner.
Yeah, right. So I forget what the name of that game was, but it was pretty fun. And I just started playing Strat online. I was interested in I've never played the dice game, and I don't have a group of friends who play Strat. So my community is the Strat 365 community. And by the way, I really appreciate you putting together this show. I think it's amazing. It's a lot of work, obviously. You do a great job, and I love the music. The music's incredible.
Thank you so much.
On.
Yeah,
I mean, it's really that it's original music. I mean, it sounds great.
I'm so lucky in that fact. The guy that wrote all the music, and he actually wrote it. He played all the instruments on it. He did all the production on it. We were in choir together when we were 12 and 13 at this little tiny Christian school at the end of a street, like right up next to a railroad track. And there were only 5 tenors in the entire choir, and one of them was the guy who played the piano. So we sat there next to each other for a couple of years, and then we started playing music together ourselves in our 20s, playing together. And I sang in his family band. And so when I started this whole project, he said, "Hey, can I do this for you?" And he really went out of his way. He really is one of the top musicians I've ever played with, and I played in Europe for about musician? 5 years. Yeah, he's a professional musician. In fact, he wrote the horns and played on John Lee Hooker Jr.'s album a couple of years ago that was nominated for a Grammy, and they lost to B.B. King. And his thing is that he always tells me, he goes, "Dude, if you're gonna lose in the blues, you lose to B.B. King." So, He really is, and I'm really lucky in that fact that he was willing to put that all together for me. He wrote like I think I have 7 different original bumpers, and then the theme song, and he's just he really did me up right, man. I cannot say enough. In fact, we're going to be
I
hanging out
completely
on
agree.
Tuesday, so I'm looking forward to spend a little time hanging out with him, and we're going to work on some other projects. So I'll pass that along to him, Frank. He'll really appreciate that. So
Yeah, I mean, there's almost no programs that have such nice, music to go along with them. Talk
oh
programs, the
yeah,
best.
thank you so
So
much.
that's great.
So I had
Yeah.
one question for you a little bit here. With like in those Orioles teams, you really must have loved them having that 1969 set to be able to play that short-term run set. That must have been right up your alley. Those are your
Right.
guys.
So I started with the 1969 set, playing Strat. Before they had, I guess at the time, they had only the 80s set in the mystery format. And to me, the 80s set is still the worst set. It's priced, the salaries are terrible. There's not many players, for how many players played in the 80s. It's not a full set. Um, and the whole 80s, I mean, I got really turned off with the whole, um, labor, the whole walkout, and that they weren't playing for a couple seasons there. Um, so I stopped following, stopped being such a baseball fan in the '80s, I guess, as I was in the. It was much more fun for me as a kid in the in the '70s, basically. Um, 69 sets really good. Willie McCovey has a great, incredible year in 1969. Um, yeah, so I knew that set really well. I have not played very much of the year sets like 2018 and 19, the 2000s. I've tried it once, and I did okay, so, and didn't follow up. I think for me, the mystery set is so much more interesting because you have to figure out which year the player is on, and it's also more realistic because you get a group of players to start the season. You don't really know how they're going to play. I mean, when you're doing a year set, you can figure out, okay, this guy's going to be my leadoff hitter. This guy's going to bat fifth. You know it when you start the season. In the mystery set, you don't know that. You have to kind of figure out what players are good at to see where you're going to put them in the lineup.
You know,
I wanted to mention one thing about the Strat that I really enjoy as a hobby is that so I work a busy job. I run my own company, and I have a lot of worries. And if I go to bed at night and I think, oh, I've got this to do and this to do and this to do, I'm never going to go to sleep. So, so I often think about what my lineup is going to be, and I run through my lineup or which players I'm going to keep at each position. And before you know it, I'm asleep because
mm-hmm.
it's a really relaxing thing to do. So I don't know. I think that may be a bit of advice that some players can follow that because it's like counting sheep or whatever. It's like a soothing mental activity because it's a game. It doesn't. Nobody's going to get hurt or
Yeah.
you're not going to get fired or something. So that's something I really enjoy about Strat as well. So I'm often thinking about my teams.
So it's 2:30 in the morning. I go in, I grab a sandwich, and I sit down with my Strat team. I mean, actually, that night I was looking at what we were doing in the tournament. Probably in our finals league. Or the semifinals, I guess, at that point. And and so then after I got done looking at my teams, I switched over because I'm in a 24-man continuous league that's been going on for about 2 years. John Carter's in it too. A couple of guys. There's probably about 7 guys in the tournament that we've got now in the tournament from that league. And so we have a Facebook group. So I flipped onto Facebook into groups just to see if anybody had talked some smack. You know what I mean? And in there was in one of the Strat-O-Matic groups was the Sportscast 365, and they put an ad in there, and they said, "Is there anybody interested in doing an hour-long weekly radio show on Strat-O-Matic?" And probably because it was like the
Well,
middle of the night, and I'm like, punch drunk because it's now like 3:45 in the morning. I'm like, why not? So I emailed them. I emailed them to the meth thing. Like I go to bed, and so I've only like just laid down, and all of a sudden my phone messages, "Hey, can you send us a um uh the demo, the what you did for the first podcast, the one back in January before." Because I started to do it, and then tax season got crazy, and I was like, dude, there's no way I can do these two things like it together and learn how to do podcasting and learn how to do that. So I sent them that. 15 minutes later, they messaged me and said, "Hey, did I want to do an interview?" So again, I was kind of like in the right place at the right time. So I've really been lucky in that aspect. So again, lucky to have a buddy that could do that for me. So, you know, yeah, I've been a lucky dude. I married up too. I fully admit that too. So,
nice.
uh, okay, well, let is going. Let's get ready to hop back in. Let's talk a little bit about how you let's start in with the stuff like when we could talk about a second on the APBA, like how you kind of got into playing this type of game type of stuff. So, okay, we are back. I am here with Franky35. So you had said that you started out with the spinner game and then you went on to APBA for playing cards and dice. Is that what you
Right.
said? So
Yeah.
how old were you when you started playing those?
I guess about 7th grade, maybe something
Mm-hmm.
like that.
Yeah, it's similar for me. Similar for me. And my best friend Jimmy D's. So yeah. So then, when did you start playing the digital game, the 365?
I guess about 10 years ago, maybe, with the 69 set, something like that.
Okay. Did you play it when
Approximately.
it was back on the Sporting News, or only when it was on Stratomatic themselves were
Sporting News.
hosting?
Back when it was on the Sporting News, yeah.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Did
So
you
they
know
had
what?
the 69 set. Oh, I started with football, actually.
That was my next question. I was going to ask you if there was other statistical sports games that you had played, even if not Stratomatic, hockey, football. So digital football with Stratomatic was your starting point then, I
Right, and
guess.
that was also 365. It was also the Sporting News, it was online, and it was a pretty good game. And then there was a few years that they stopped doing football, so they had this game, and it was pretty good. You had a lot of control over the players you'd select, but you could only it was like quarter by quarter. Each night was one quarter, and you'd select your strategy for that quarter. And a lot of strategy went into how you selected your team. And then they stopped it for a number of years, and so I switched over to playing baseball. Um, and then they've redone the football, but I have not got back into it. For my taste, it's not as they don't it, they don't let you control as much as they used to
Mm,
me.
yeah.
So I don't think it's gained that much popularity, and I kind of think that's why that they don't provide enough manager control.
And I also think there is a segment of the 365 community that likes to watch the games. And being able to see your
Definitely,
batters go around. I mean, I think the football not having
definitely.
an aspect like that probably lowers it also, I know some people just do the box scores, but I also know a lot of guys that like to tease the game out for themselves and like to watch it play. So with the football not having that aspect, have you played any of the? So you haven't played any of the Stratomatic with the card and dice or the computer?
I've never played. I guess I played in college. I played a little Strat-O-Matic football, but I never played Strat-O-Matic baseball with the cards and dice ever.
Mm-hmm. I actually gonna be having somebody come on in a couple weeks, and they're gonna walk me through how to play Strat-O-Matic football on the cards and dice because I had never played it myself. So yeah, little teaser forward for people going off of that. Um, I was I right? It's at 7 out of the last 8 that you have made the finals.
I don't know about that, but let me mention on another card and dice game I used to play
Okay.
is Avalon Hill used to have all these games
Oh
back in the
yes.
70s and 80s. So I played a lot of those games. I loved those Avalon Hill games.
Yeah.
There's if there were a website to do those online, I'd be interested too. I've looked for that occasionally, but
Yeah.
those were fun strategy games too.
Jimmy D's and I, we played the football one and we played the boxing one when we were kids. The
Okay.
football one, the football one took forever. The games was just, they were so long. We'd be playing all night on a Friday night because we were really nerds. So I loved it, but that Avalon Hill football game took forever to play. So wonderful, wonderful memories. Okay. So, um, okay, so let's talk then a little bit about your memories of the tournament. So, you know, how, what was kind of your experiences as you were starting out, or what are some of the highs that you've had while you've been in the tournament? Some of the high points.
Uh, Well, winning the finals in the first time was really, I felt good for a long time afterwards. Um, and then this last year that you were in, I thought it was a great finals league. I really had fun managing it. I really managed the hell out of the finals. I'm really, really into that last because the competition is so great. And, that level of competition I really enjoy. Um, that I did a write up on the message board. I don't know if you've seen that on my summary of the league, the finals league in particular.
Yeah.
Um, so I really enjoyed it. We're about to start the 60s leg of this tournament. This tournament's going to be different because it's going to be much longer in time. It's going to be 10 months, I think, before we get to the finals or the finals are decided. Um, So I enjoy, seeing how I do, trying to make it into the final 12. Really tough competition.
Yeah, and it doesn't. I mean, the thing about this tournament is, unlike the other two, you don't get to drop one. So you got to live with what you do, no matter what. There's no. Okay, well, this team's lousy, so I'm just gonna give up on it. You got to try to
Right, and
find a
I
way
think
to
that's
fix it.
better. I think you have fewer, dead teams that are, just throw in the towel and if you happen to be lucky and be in a division with two players that aren't even managing their teams, yeah, you can do really great, but it's better for everybody if everybody's in there, trying to do their best.
Well, yeah. Well, and for me this year, my '70s team, that's one of the banes of my existence is that '70s set. And but I got up to where I was, just outside the wild card by the end, and then I was really setting a good spot for my really good run in the '80s and the '90s. Then, so you know, but if I had given up on that '70s team, there's no doubt I would not have been in a chance to be in the finals. You cannot give up on any team. So yeah,
I'm
that's a really
surprised that you've had trouble in the 70s. I would think you'd do well in the 70s, and I'd say so. I do these theme leagues, and one theme league we had set up a third into three. Each division was separated like one was the best fielders, one was the best hitters, and one was the best pitchers. And the best fielding team did the best in that league.
mm,
And so I feel like the 70s pricing fielding is rewarded.
mm-hmm.
Um, or that if you go for good fielding, it's a pretty good strategy in the 70s, maybe more so than some of the other decades. But obviously you did really well in the 60s with that strategy.
Yeah.
I don't think the 80s is that way at all. I mean, the
I
80s
think
is just so
you have to switch
simplified.
away from my strategy the later you go. For the 60s, I've always been defense and hitting. You know, there's just
Yeah,
I don't think
it
there's
worked out
almost none of
terrifically.
either. So if I
With
can get
Aparicio
that,
in the first round.
yep. Hey,
Yeah,
well,
that was a surprise draft pick.
yeah.
Aparicio in the first round.
Oh,
Worked
well,
out
it
very well.
it turned there's no doubt the Richardson Aparicio pairing is what got me probably at least 5 or 6 wins with double plays like at the right time.
Well, I had a problem with your Richardson playing him against lefties because it was some year that it was like a 3R year. I mean, he's a terrible hitter to start.
Yeah.
And so a 3R year is lefty hitting against lefties is going to be really bad.
Yeah.
So he's one at second, but I don't know. I felt like you could have platooned him and gotten a little more mileage out of the
Yeah.
second base offensive.
Possibly.
Production.
I did have, I can't remember who that second baseman I had, that backup that's a good hitting second baseman in there. But I think that's one of the things that is very an underrated strategy in that 1960s. I can say it now that we drafted our 60s. Nobody thinks about the ninth spot. I think about the ninth spot like crazy.
The ninth spot. What do you mean the ninth spot?
The pinch hitter. Because I'm gonna go with a team. I'm gonna get look for 5 starters that I'm gonna get for a good value that don't give up home runs. I'm gonna get in a home run park and I'm gonna out homer you and out defense you. And so I need a bullpen. So I'm gonna have 4 or 5 guys that are gonna be playable in my bullpen, and that means there's going to be a lot of pinch hitters. So
right.
if I love getting like Ted Savage and Will Smith and Len Gabrielson and some of those guys for that 1960s because, they can't play any defense, but dude, they're a solid hitter against one hand, that's literally like a regular everyday player. And they're a fraction of the price of that type of stuff. So
yeah, well, it's a different strategy where you're playing with a DH and not a DH. So the 60s not DH, pinch hitters play a bigger role. You're going to get more substitution away from your starting pitcher that you don't in the 70s DH. Starters can go quite a ways.
Yeah,
it kind of de-emphasizes the bullpen.
Yeah, I agree. I agree. In fact, what year is it? That we were playing. Oh, in the 82 set we were playing. There's almost no bullpen guys in that set. It's just there's like 13 playable relievers. And I picked up like 5 of them. I think I originally had 6 or 7 and traded 2 away. But just there isn't any, and you know what? It has not helped me as nearly as much as I thought it was going to. So it's really been, I really thought it was a really smart strategy, and it really has not been that smart of a strategy. Well, that kind of goes back to one thing we were talking about playing the mystery sets. And, I really do believe that there is each type of the different type of sets, the all-time great set, the yearly sets, and the mystery sets are all, even though you're playing the same game, you're playing 3 different games, if that makes sense. And I think each one of them, speaks out to a different type of person. The guy on the round table, Sir Peter, he loves mystery sets. Now, part of the reason is he's dang good at reading cards. I got to give it to him. He's really got a knack at reading cards. So, I really think that that's an interesting take. So have you you said you tried the yearly sets and it really wasn't your thing. And have you tried the all-time great set? Is it that's kind of the
I
similar
don't think
thing?
I've ever done an all-time great set, and that's because I actually prefer to play. I don't like having an all-star at every position.
Mm-hmm.
I prefer to play with some of the regular players, and I love to see some of these, find places for some of these, marginal players and get use out of them. Some of my favorite players, watching baseball, I loved Ron Oster on the Reds. Well,
Mm-hmm.
he's not going to be in the all-time greats.
Well, yeah, he's in there. He's in there.
He's in the all-time greats.
Yeah.
Ron Oster.
Because you have to have all types of players. There's like guys who are only 500,000. So it's
I
not
didn't
just
realize
like
that.
a whole. So like even with the not mystery tournament, the Barnstormers tournament, one of the events is a $60 million league. Dude, it's tough to put a $60 million team together. So
Yeah, okay. I didn't
it's
realize that.
really
I thought
about.
all-time greats was. I haven't looked at it that much because when I do look at the player set, I guess I only look at the first few, and they're all, okay, Mickey Mantle, 1960 or whatever,
Yeah.
Bob Gibson, 1969. Okay, well these guys, you put these guys in your lineup. Yeah, you're gonna, but you play two great lineups against each other. I don't know. That's not baseball to me, but
Yeah, well, but here's the thing: if you're playing in an $80 million league and you got a $16 million Barry, you ain't gonna have a whole lot else. You're gonna have to figure out how to put all the rest of it around him. You know,
okay.
I've done that, and then all he did was get intentionally walked all the time. So,
Okay.
but it's so they're kind of I've always noticed that for the guys that play in that tournament, it's all about knowing the set, and they know all these guys that are like can do specific things really well.
In the 70s, there's Rick Auerbach. The most marginal player you could imagine, in baseball. I mean, he just hung in there year to year, but he has this one year where he just happened to, in his 20 at bats against lefties or whatever, he happened to get, a lot of doubles and home runs. And so their card reflects that. And if you luck out and get that card, all of a sudden you have the best, essentially, you have he's like Hank Aaron.
Yeah.
So, but he's a 70, I think he's a 0.75 mil player.
Yeah.
So, in the
My guy
mystery
in the
cards, I try
'90s
to get
is
lucky with those.
my guy in the '90s is Phil Plantier. Did you get
Uh-huh.
that 1 year, dude? You can get a all-star MVP for 2.7 million.
Right. The All-Star, the 90s is a big set, and there's a lot of players that have really good single years or maybe double. Plantier might have a couple. He has
Yeah.
one great year and one good year.
One of the things I like to ask all my guests that play Strat, and it's my secret weapon is like so. You gave a couple guys just right there. But is there any? There's just that one guy that you just love to play that card.
There's a lot of players. I'm often picking many of the same players, and I don't know if people are now. Sometimes I feel like people are looking at the players that I pick because I've had success and copying it that I'm in leagues with. Like in the '60s league we just drafted, I feel like a lot of people went. Several people went for my strategy of kind of a lefty biased team. So I missed out on Mickey Mantle. I think Eddie Matthews was terrific. He's got a great card, and there are not many good hitting third basemen. It's a real challenge to get a good hitting third baseman in the 60s. So he's one of my favorite cards from the 60s. And it's a mystery format, so I like to get good value players and players that I can read their card. I don't want to, the 70s is coming up. I don't know when this is going to air. If this is going to air pre or post
Well,
selection.
it'll air on it'll be airing this Saturday. So
Okay, so I'm not going to give you my favorite
no,
70s picks. 60s, I like Miller on a reliever. There aren't many like good value relievers in the 60s, so I kind of focus on those guys in like the 1 to 2.5 mil range, and that almost many of them. Art Fowler is another one in there. I do like Richardson, but he has a lot of terrible hitting years. Bobby Richardson. I thought it was interesting. James, the guy who evaluates the statistical things about players, called him like one of the worst leadoff hitters in the history of baseball. Bobby Richardson, but he does have one really good year and a couple playable years. Petrocelli I picked out. He's kind of an obscure player in like real baseball, but he had this incredible year in 1969 where apparently he was a great fielding shortstop and he hit the heck out of the ball. But in the 70s he went over to third base.
Do you like to platoon, or are you more of a guy that likes to be solid in a position? I want one guy to play that.
Since they fixed platooning, it used to be that Strat did not reliably change your platoon hitter, but I don't know, 5 years ago or something, they fixed that. So they will, every single time, they'll make the platoon switch. So I like platooning a lot. I think a strategy to counteract that is to have, if you're playing somebody who platoons a lot with really platoon players. There's like in the 70s, Blomberg for the Yankees. He only hits righties. He's terrible against lefties. So, I mean, I might try it if I know that I'm playing a team with a bunch of those, and I look out. At some point in the season, I look out. And I say, okay, what are the top teams playing? And if I see a team like that, I might get, some cheap starting pitchers, pitch them from 6 innings, then set my righty pitchers, then set my lefty pitchers for middle relief, and then have closers or set up and closer pitchers that are righty. So now I've got their terrible hitters in the late innings with terrible matchups. Mm-hmm. So that's I don't like to have too many strict platoon players in case other people take that strategy. But I don't think many people do that. I think I'm one of the players who most looks at who else the other teams in the league. So I'm doing that at like game 20 to 60 in the mystery leagues. I'm looking and saying, okay, who am I going to play in the playoffs? How do I stack my lineup to match up well against them? In the 70s, I mean, I kind of like Jack Clark, and I liked him as a player. I mean, you saw a lot of Jack Clark probably growing up with the Giants. I mean, as a player, it was great. I hardly ever see anybody swing the bat that hard. And he just kills lefties. He has some years where he just obliterates lefty pitching in the 70s.
Some really good on base.
Yeah, but not that great against righties. I mean, he's okay. In the 80 set, he's tremendous on base percentage. He really learned to.
Oh, that's right. That's what I'm thinking.
Force pitchers to throw strikes. Yeah, I guess it's offhand. I don't want to give away my 70 players that I'm going to pick. But
don't give away your guys for sure. So you gave us a couple. So you gave us a couple. So I've said it before on this show. What mine and it's really cool to me because it was one of the sets that they redid this year, the 1986 set. That was the second set I ever had that we played card and dice. We got we had the 84 and then we had the 86. So in that 86 set, man, has like one of my very favorite cards to ever play, the Cal Daniels 86 card, because he just tears up righties like crazy, and I love to have him as my DH against righties. So and
Yeah,
but
he's good in the '80s.
in the I get his card in the 80s a lot of times too, but in the all time great set they have that, and it's only like I think 5 million. They've got the 87 Cal Daniels card, which since playing 365, that's become my favorite card because he just
Yeah, I love Cal
kills.
Daniels.
I really love playing that. Okay, so um what are let, let's let, let's go with something else for some of the new players. I mean, you're really great about reaching out to them, but what are just some general advice that you have for guys who are new to 365 or new? Yeah, let's start with that. First, new to 365, and then we'll talk about new to mystery after that. So,
I would
what
say,
tip would you have?
to get good, you have to play a few leagues. You're not going to, I don't think you're going to start off good. I didn't. Um, and to look at the other players that are doing well and see how they're doing it. Um, you know, um, so and to relax and enjoy the game. People are playing it for fun. We're not playing it for money so I see sometimes people get really angry, and I'm like, why? What do you get out of that? Have fun. It's it's just a game. It's friendly competition, and that's my recommendation for new players.
Okay. Any specific mystery tournament recommendation for people who are new to the mystery tournament?
Well, I often go with the strategy of picking a stadium that's friendly either to righties or lefties and stacking my lineup to that. I make a significant number of moves to get good players. So I think that's a successful strategy, but it's not the only strategy. There's a lot of ways to win in this game. Um, uh, just to keep it's a marathon. So don't, just because things aren't working out, you can be patient. I was in one tournament and I was literally the last player for the first 2 or 3 weeks of the tournament, and I made the finals. Really turned things around. So it's a long tournament. Be patient, but don't be patient with if you suspect you've really got a bad player, a bad year, don't be too patient with that. Cut. You know, you cut a player before you're 100% sure that he's a bad player. If you're 90% sure, that's good enough. Cut him. Get a
Mm-hmm.
better year. Get a player with a better year. That's my recommendation for doing well over a long tournament, mystery
Oh,
tournament.
that's some really good advice, Frank. I think. A thing that you might like, since we're going back to that all-time great tournament real quick, is one of the things that makes it different because you have all those stadiums to choose from. You could just like, oh, I'm just going to pick a bunch of the same type of stadium. They do a thing where each of the different rounds has to be a different style of stadium. So they have all the
Okay.
stadiums broken up: extreme pitcher, moderate pitcher, neutral, moderate hitter, extreme righty, extreme lefty.
Hmm.
So that really dings a lot of people because it's not like okay, we know what I like to build, man. We know where I'm most comfortable. You know, I like to hit the long ball. I like to play good D. That's the way that's the way if I'm building the team anytime, that's the way. But playing in that tournament, you just can't do that because now I'm going to be in a ballpark where I can't hit like that. So, or I'm going to have to really gear myself towards like one hand or the other. So, you might like that aspect of that. You know,
I might have to give that a try.
you
I
know
didn't realize
that.
that they offered this many challenges. I'll have to take a look again at the all-time set.
Yeah,
Maybe I haven't looked at it. I've only looked at like the first 25 players or something.
yeah. Take a look and
Need to
look at the
go.
thread on the Barnstormers. So, I mean, I'm not trying to take you away from this. I'm trying to fill your head with that so you're not as good at this, Frank. This is my strategy to win this year. I get you sidetracked, and then I can steal it.
Well, I am going to try to win. I will tell
Oh
you that.
well, dude. I think if anybody has a good shot, at least being there, I think it's you and Hollow Rose that just when I for the show I went back and I plotted where, you know, back when we were at the 24 people, I plotted where everybody had been at any time over the as far back as I could go with the tournament pages on the online, and just to see you and to see Hollow Rose there like every year. You know, a lot of people be there for, you know, out of those 8, 9 years I could see a lot of guys that were there 4 years or 5 years, but you know, the two of you guys were there just about every year, and that's a testament. That's a long time without any bad teams, Frank.
Well, there's the other player who's has won the most championships is Moody Woody.
Yep.
Um,
That's who you
so
gotta.
and
That's who you could. Will you win this year? You'll be tied with him for most championships.
yeah, that's a
You,
big if.
that's it. You
And
push pin 76.
he's got a interesting. He won in the '80s, and he made a huge, like an insane number of moves. In the first few days of the finals. I can't remember, but it was some crazy. He'd cut players and he'd pick up the same player. He was making moves right and left, and it paid off, and he won the tournament. Another interesting strategy: John Boy won twice, and both times he had Ron Guidry's MVP year. So Ron Guidry, I
Mm.
think it was 77 or something. He was unreal, right? It was like one of the best pitching years of all time. And the 70s, and I think we were playing with the DH, so he'd put Guidry in there, and 70% chance he's going to win a game or 80% chance. He was just unbelievable. So one other player, Guidry, you get his good year. Well, you're in the playoffs. I got to
Yeah.
say.
Well, yeah. And I think it's cool the way the tournament does it to where it alternates the 2 years, with the 1 year having the 70s with the DH and the 1 year with the 70s without, because it really does make it a different set.
Yeah, and Guidry plays in the '80s too, and that year is also carried over into the '80s.
Well, I'll give somebody some piece of advice for the 70s and 80s, because we've mentioned this card on the show like 80 million times. Dusty Baker. I love Dusty Baker's with my type of team, both his 70s and his 80s card, because he's
That's
so
interesting.
ballpark determinant. You know, if he so many of his home runs are ballpark checks. So if you're in
Okay.
a good place that says, you know, if you're in the Astrodome, you're going to be terrible, but if you're in Fenway, you're going to do great. And he's so readable, because both cards have 4 really good years and one stinkfest. And that stinkfest, he's got a 4 injury. So it kind of plays out easy to find out if you got one of the 4 good ones or if you got that bad one. So I think that's another thing that you can kind of both. It's a secret weapon guy, and it's kind of a strategy to look at that. So are you
I think
more
it's
apt to get a guy
different.
who has, you know, 4 good years out of 5, or a guy that you're going to take the risk on that he's going to have a year that's great and 2 years that he can platoon and 2 years he's unplayable? Which guy do you rather would you go after more? Do you do a mix of the two?
Uh, I try to get the best player. So uh, I am often drawn to those players with like 1 or 2 good years because of potential value. Of course, if I have the option like later in the season, once like the 10% or the 20% penalty kicks in, it becomes important to get a player you're going to keep. So then, if there's anyone available with a lot of decent years, I'll prefer them. Early on, I don't have a big preference. I mean, I love to have some of the great players. I mean, the finals, Willie Mays, I picked him first in the draft. We had we had the online draft, which I love. If people haven't tried it, it's so much fun in I think any format. And Willie Mays, most expensive card, but yeah, he was super great for my team. So I like figuring out players. That's the other thing. I like the challenge. It's enjoyable for me to try to figure out the players. So I like that part of the game. So it's almost not that fun if I get a player with 5, pretty good years. Okay,
Yeah.
It takes away a little bit of the fun for me.
Well, it kind of goes back to what we were saying before about the kind of the different type, the more the historian guys that like the all-time greats. And one of the guys that has been on this show, he won the players last year, and he's actually going to be in the mystery this time, is Hendrix 08, Mark Takamoto. And that's one of his things is he doesn't play mystery very often because he doesn't like that aspect of having to try to figure it out. He likes the mathematical precision of being able to build a team. And it's the same game, but it's played a different way, if that makes sense. And I think both are wonderful ways to play.
Well, I think mystery has both. I love the mystery game. I think it has, once you figure out who you have to set your lineup to maximize their skill set, how their card looks, if you get down to the mathematics of it.
Yeah.
And by the way, a piece of advice I got from your podcast and this is not called a podcast. This is whatever this is called.
Yeah. Radio show.
Radio show is to look at those color bars at the bottom. That's actually a very fast way to evaluate the various mystery years. I hadn't appreciated it. I knew it was there, but I didn't see. And you said, I look at those. And I said, okay, let me try that out. And yeah, that's a really quick way to get a understanding of each player's year, each season.
Well, the way I look at it, it's taking 108 and busting up into 100%. It's so close.
Yeah, I think I haven't seen any discrepancies.
So it kind of then it makes it easy for my brain to place all the pieces together, because then I'm not trying to evaluate a 2 versus a 6. It's actually done that for me, and especially when we're playing faster, when you're playing card and dice, you got all day to figure that out. But when you're playing it 3 games a night, having that to be able to read it, I think really kind of helps.